Go ahead and tell me, since all I know is that John Anderson told me that you would be a great story and you had some pretty interesting. I've known John for a long time. I guess I know him now because he and I serve on the United Way board together. I'm the chairman of the board of United Way this year. He just rolled off the board. And I've just known him because everybody knows John. John just gets around. So anyway, tell me what, you served in Vietnam, right?
I was in Vietnam, yes. Graduated from A&M, the class of 64. In my junior year in A&M, we had a Army recruiter come down that was recruiting for flight school.
Right.
And Tom, he came in. They were looking for recruits for pilot training at the time, and of course Vietnam was relatively unknown. And I just thought it'd be a real neat deal, to wear sunglasses and a scarf and to fly. So I signed up. My first lesson, which was out here at Easterwood Airport, they had a kind of a deal where you went through early training so that you wouldn't be quite so green when you went into the service, and started your training there. My first lesson was my first time up, and it scared me absolutely to death. I mean, I was terrified. I said, oh no, what in the world have I got myself into? But I went ahead and I completed that training, and with the idea that once I did, then when I went into the service, I would go to flight school and learn to fly. And it was kind of left open. Rotary wing was, kind of unknown. Most of it was fixed wing at the time. So that was kind of my image, that I would fly. So I went into the service, went through my basic training, then got my orders to flight school. And by the time I got the orders to flight school, Vietnam was really beginning to heat up.
Sure.
And we had Fort Walters, Texas, was the largest heliport in the world at that time. And they were bringing these kids in, and I was one of thousands of these young men that went in and tried to learn how to fly helicopters. I don't know if you know anything about helicopters or not, but they always told us they were a machine that was never meant to fly. It defies the laws of physics. Well, I went through the flight training at Fort Walters, on to Fort Rucker, and by that time the Army had introduced the Huey into the inventory. The Huey, I read recently, was a slow, vulnerable machine, but we really didn't know that because at the time it came in, it was state of the art. So, Huey training at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and then 100% of my class that graduated in flight school had orders for Vietnam 3 months before we ever graduated. So we all went, the whole kit and caboodle, and I was assigned to report to the 1st Cav Division at An Khê, Vietnam in June of 1966. Now, the 1st Cav Division was the one that was chronicled in the book We Were Soldiers, if you read that. That was a part of the division. The unit I was assigned to was the 1st of the 9th, 1st Squadron, 9th Cavalry, and we were the recon squadron for the division. Had a couple soldiers in here the other day that were recruiting, and I told them what unit I was in, and one of them said that was the unit that had the highest kill rate in Vietnam of any. And it didn't surprise me, I didn't know that, and I don't know that for a fact, but anyway, we were one of the units that was out there, basically what you would call on the front lines.
Right.
And so in June of 66, I flew into Pleiku, Vietnam on a C-141. We unloaded. One of the things I remember the captain, I think when you go into combat, and you are of the gender that you remember the World War II movies, and you get off and you're not sure what to do. You're not sure what to expect. And Pleiku, when he pulled that thing in, he said, I want you to disembark as quickly as you can. I do not want to be on the ground any longer than I have to. And so you didn't know whether to grab your bags and run for a bunker or whether you'd be taken under fire, as soon as you got off or what, but you tried to act brave. So, you filed down the line, and he wheeled that thing around and got it out of there just as fast as he could. Pleiku's in the Central Highlands. It's over not too far from the Cambodian border. Hills and bunkers and that sort of thing were all around. So, I just looked around. I was kind of in awe. The 1st Cav sent a warrant officer over to pick us up, and An Khê was about a 30-mile flight from Pleiku. into the Central Highlands, and they took us over there. And when we got there, of course, my outfit was out in the field and at Khartoum, which is north of Pleiku. This warrant officer carried me up to the top of a little hill where we'd left. When the cav came in there, it just basically carved the landing zone out of the jungle, and they had to get in there and fight their way, out and clear the area. They had a valley there they called Happy Valley, which the soldiers all knew well. But anyway, he took me to the top of this little hill, and they built these little hooches, as we called them up there, and they were nothing more than just little makeshift sheds, that they slept in whenever they came through. And there was nobody else around, and we stood at the top of that hill, and I looked down this long incline in this kind of a road-like thing, and down here was a barbed wire fence, which was the perimeter, and it was about 12 feet high with guard towers stationed, every so often. And that sucker took me out there, and he looked out there, and he shook his head, and he said, "Yep, Charlie's out there." And then he left me. And so, I'm sitting up there by myself, and it's getting dark, and put me in this little hooch, to sleep for the night. Well, I lay down, and all night long, the artillery rounds were going. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
You're by yourself?
But yeah, basically, I was in the division in camp, but I'm basically just up there. Yeah. And they issued me a .38 caliber pistol that was a 6-shot with a 4-inch barrel. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm laying there, and the artillery rounds are going off, and you can't tell the difference between outgoing and incoming at that point.
Sure.
And I'm scared absolutely out of my mind. And with that little gun, I didn't sleep at all that night.
This is your first night in Vietnam?
That's my first night in Vietnam. And of course, when I shut my eyes, what I saw was the World War II Japanese banzai attacks, with hordes of enemy soldiers coming up that hill, right at me. So, but anyway, I found out later that's probably safer than Montrose Street down in Houston. At that point, I didn't know that. So I slept up there that night. Well, the next morning, he came. His name was Huckman. And he came down, and he was a maintenance officer, and he was taking a ship back up to the outfit, which was at Khartoum. So we started down there. Now, one of the significant things about that is that the flight from Anke to Khartoum took us over a pass. And you look down on this pass, and you see all these little specks down there. And I looked down there, and I said, what in the world is that? And he said, well, there's 10,000 French soldiers buried there. This is where they were ambushed when they were in Vietnam. So you look at that. He took me on into Khartoum. We got there probably early afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock, and the people were all out doing, on missions and that sort of thing. And what we had in our outfit is we had a lift section which carried a platoon. We had a scout section which flew little helicopters that scouted the areas, and then we had a weapons section which flew basically, see that little ship right over there? That's a B-model Huey with rockets on it. And that's what the weapons section flew. So we did, we saluted the troop commander, and he welcomed us into the troop, and gave us a little briefing about what they were trying to do. And essentially, that's fairly close to the Cambodian border, so they were trying to stop supplies coming across the Cambodian border and find them. And then he asked us if we had any preferences in terms of what unit we were assigned to. I didn't have a clue, so I said no, I didn't. So I was assigned to do lift, which was to carry the platoon, the scout platoon. So in a little while they came in. So
your chopper was not this one.
No,
it was a.
I flew a D model.
A D model.
Yeah, a D model Huey, which was the lift. Okay. So, but we had the three elements in it.
Okay.
And everybody told me, the veterans that were there said, whatever you do, don't get in the lift, because they had lost significant numbers of blue ships since they'd been there. But again, I didn't know any better, so whatever they assigned me to. The platoon came in, and the lift leader was a captain, and he said, I want to take you out on an orientation run. I said, fine. So I'm flying, pilot seat, he's in the left seat, and we fly down to Playcoot, and we've got a couple of infantrymen in the back. I think we went on a run down there maybe to pick up some beer or Cokes or something, but, I don't remember now. But anyway, we flew down there, and on the way back, he said, I want to show you, kind of flying we do. It's what we call nap of the earth. Now, we had
nap of the earth?
Nap, N-A-P, nap of the earth. We had trained on that because a helicopter's most vulnerable, low and slow. Okay, so, if you get high, generally you were okay. If you're down close and you're fast, you're okay. So that's what you call nap of the earth flying. In flight school, we flew at maybe 25, 30 feet above the ground, going around trees and that sort of thing. When he took that thing down to the deck, we were dragging our skids through the treetops, and we were inches. I mean, right above the ground where he could get it down. And I'm thinking, I can't do this. This is beyond my training. And at the time that he was, really demonstrating that, we started getting a lot of radio calls. And one of our helicopters had gone down, had been shot down. This is my second day. Okay. And I'm
This is on your orientation flight.
Yes, this is my orientation flight. And I'm in the lift, section. And the troop commander's calling for him to come back. Because we got this helicopter down, he wants to insert this platoon to go get the pilots. They knew they were dead at the time, but that was the kind of the orientation.
Right.
So we go hauling back just as fast as we can get there. We must have been 15 minutes out, and we get in. When we do a tight turn, cut, swoop down. The infantry platoon's already geared up. They're ready to go. They jump on board. We take off.
This is no longer an orientation.
This is no longer, well, in a way it was. I've never seen it before.
For you it is.
Yeah,
but
for me it is. I'm just sitting there.
It had become a lift now.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh, well, we're headed down. Of course, you can hear the radio. You know what's going on the radio, and they're calling in airstrikes, and our gunships are making runs to try to suppress the fire, that's coming up off the mountainside, and it's pretty heavy. And so a lot of things that. It's been 40 years, a lot of things are kind of hazy now, but I remember flying into the area and this smoke, which oftentimes was prevalent over a battlefield where the bombs are going off and this kind of thing. There was a low-hanging smoke. They had a prop-driven aircraft over there called an A-1E, which was a kind of a World War II vintage, but it was powerful and prop-driven and could give close cover. So they used it for bombing and strafing runs for infantry cover. And those things were going in, dropping 500-pound bombs, and our gunships were going in. And my co-pilot, who was the section leader, is talking to the troop commander on the radio, and they're talking about taking these troops in and landing. And I'm just listening to all this. And they've selected an LZ. And so they identify the LZ. We've got I think a 4-ship formation.
What's LZ?
Landing zone.
Okay.
Landing zone. Got to get accustomed to that because that's important. Okay.
Right.
So we're going in, and then of course in flight school we practice this stuff, to some degree. And I kept asking. I said, well, "Where's the LZ?" And he said, "Well, it's right out there." And we fly a little bit. I said, "Where's the LZ? I can't see it." He said, "Well, it's right out there." Tom, we went in to a mountainside with stubble and, there wasn't enough room for that helicopter in there. I'd never seen anything like it in training, when we went into a landing zone. It would be at least the size of a 50-yard, football field. This was not it at all. And I remember on the way in, there was one of the other pilots that was fairly new flying behind us. On the stick on a Huey, they call the cyclic, you have a trigger mechanism, and you pull it one click and you can talk intercom. You pull it two and it goes out on the radio. It was not uncommon for people, if you're in a tense situation, to just squeeze it and you'd go out on the radio and say things that you just meant for the crew to hear. And so one of these guys behind us talked to his pilot, and he's a new one like I am. And he tells him, he said, "I don't know about you, but this scares the hell out of me." And I thought, amen. Well, we got down, and as soon as we did the infantry, disembark, and they just disappeared. I mean, they just jumped off, and they were gone into the jungle. It was amazing to me. I didn't understand exactly how all that happened, but they were gone. They knew what they were about. And we took off, and then what you do is you go back and you orbit, waiting to pick them up. And of course, we heard them as they basically fought their way into the aircraft and recovered the 2 pilots, and then came back to the landing zone. So once they were there and ready, then we did another run and went back in and picked them up. And again, and they brought the 2 body bags and put them on board, and we took them out. By the time we got back and deposited the troops and then went to the morgue and left the bodies, it was beginning to get dark. And so, we got back after dark. And what I had done is I'd taken my bag and I had set it out there, expecting to retrieve it. Had my sleeping bag and things. I got back, I couldn't find it. It was, it was dark. I didn't have a flash. Of course, you don't have lights because we had them in the tents, but they were always covered because, you don't tell the enemy where you are, give them a target to shoot at. So I couldn't find it. Well, that night I wound up sleeping on the helicopter, and it had a little bench, a little canvas thing that the troops sat on. It was about this wide and long enough to kind of stretch on. But of course, and then they told me don't sleep on the helicopter because if they hit us, that's what they go for. But I didn't have any choice. So obviously I didn't sleep much that night. And then I'm out in the open, and I don't know if you've ever seen these flares or not, but the artillery would fire a flare and it'd go boom and shoot this thing up, and then there'd be a pop, and this thing would open and drift down, and
it would light things up.
Kinda. Yeah. It kind of like a moonlight.
Well, exactly. I didn't read the book, We Were Soldiers, but I didn't see the movie, and I noticed
I saw the movie.
Yeah, in that movie they used those flares to light up to better illuminate the enemy.
Yes.
Right.
And it would come down, drift down, and then when it got to the ground, it'd go out and it'd be firing more. And every once in a while, a machine gun would open up, and you no idea what they're shooting at. But anyway, you hear that. That's the noise, that you're accustomed to.
Right.
So I didn't get much sleep that night. And I don't remember exactly how long we were in Khartoum. It couldn't have been more than a couple of days. When word came down, see, part of the first cab was an air mobile division. What that means is everything could be put on helicopters and taken, so that we could move, at a moment's notice, basically anywhere, and take all of our gear with us. So word came down that there was a big fight going on the coast, and that we were to move, immediately to the post. So we broke our tents. At that time, I didn't have one, so it was, it was okay. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I packed my bag and threw it on board, and we started. Now, it's interesting to me. One of the things that I became accustomed to is that there's some psychological things that go on with soldiers. Okay, one of them is that when you are a veteran and you've been in combat for a while, you really do not open up to new guys very easily. There are barriers that are placed there, and these pilots that had been there for this year and had trained, prior to that were very, very good, very skilled at what they did. I mean, they did things with those helicopters that in flight school they told us were not possible. And so they didn't like to fly with the new guys. They were convinced that you were there to kill them before they got a chance to go home. So, there were lots of, and they really, weren't tremendously friendly. I wasn't that way either when I got to be, more of a veteran. But anyway, so I was flying with this guy named Chilton, and he was kind of grumpy, and he didn't much want me, being there, but it was okay because we were just taking across country going down to the coast. And so we were flying. We loaded our helicopters, and we were about 3,000 feet in the air. And there was this kind of thump, right? And I saw Chilton tense, because he let me have control, so I'm actually flying, and he kind of goes like this, and I'm seeing him looking around. And on a Huey, there's a master panel, emergency panel, that shows the master caution light comes on, and then you look down and you can read what's going on. Well, you know, I was concentrating on what I was doing. I didn't even see the master caution light come on, but it did. And he said, "I've got it." Okay, which meant, you know, to pilots that he's got the controls. So immediately I relinquished the control of the aircraft. He put that sucker into an auto rotation, which in a helicopter takes all the pitch out of the blades, all the lift, and you come down. You basically become a rock, okay? And you're coming down, and he's in a dive in an auto rotation, headed for the ground. And it wasn't very long. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Well, the master caution was on, and I looked down there, and it said transmission oil pressure. Okay, now they taught us in flight school, transmission oil pressure goes out, you have 90 seconds to get to the ground. Okay, because it tends to freeze up with that oil. So he is coming down fast. And we're calling, you know, obviously we let the troop know that we were going down. And so, you know, I don't remember too much about that other than we were coming down fast, and he made a tight turn, and we set it on a sandbar in the middle of a river, which was kind of a long sandbar. River, you know, extended, and then jungle on the side. And as soon as we hit the ground, the infantry jumped out and set up a perimeter. I got out of the aircraft, and the rotor blades are still turning. They haven't stopped yet. And I'm thinking, you know, wow, this, you know, I've already been shot down. I've only been here, you know, 3 days, and this is something else, and really not knowing what to expect. But Tom, when I turned around and I looked to the rear, we had our troop, our infantry. Those helicopters were on short final. I mean, they've already flared, and they're coming in right behind us. And basically, you know, to set up to protect us. And that was the first time I became aware of what I call the camaraderie of soldiers, or of combat. Because when you're in those kind of situations with each other, it's hard to describe the feeling that you have toward the ones that are there with you. You know, and those infantrymen, you know, they would have, you know, they would move hell and high water to get to us. And so they landed, and they jumped out, and they, you know, they did their thing. They knew exactly what they needed to do, and then I did my thing. I crawled in another helicopter, got the hell out of there, yeah. And we went on, which was what we were supposed to do. So within about a 4-day time period, I'd been shot out of the sky. I'd been into my first combat, you know, landing, combat assault. Had picked up, you know, crash victims.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know, ain't nobody going to survive this. This is too much for anybody. Well, it wasn't as bad, you know, as necessarily all that. But we went on to the coast. About 30 days later, we were back at the Chupong Mountain in the Hadrang River Valley, which is where that battle took place. We were soldiers. It was chronicled.
Right.
And the veterans that were with us were not too happy to be back in there, because they all remembered that battle, and they all had experiences in that, and that was a very difficult time for them. But we were trying to stop the soldiers from coming across. Okay? And so the troop commander came up with this plan. What he wanted to do is he wanted to put this infantry platoon down on a jungle trail at dusk. They were going to go out and set up an ambush on this trail and stay there all night. Okay, and then if they popped the ambush, then they were going to infiltrate back to the Hadrang, which was the river through there, in ones and twos, and then we were going to fly the river the next morning and pick them up. Okay, now, I thought, man, glad I'm not in the infantry. So that night we started out, and it was at dusk. And the way we would do this is you'd go in, because you knew you were being observed. They would put the infantry on board, and we'd go into an LZ with the doors open, and then shut the doors and come out with the doors shut, with the infantry still on board, to try to fool them as to where we actually, put them down. So we dropped them off, and they went out to do their things, of course, within radio contact. And my mindset, and then we went back to a little special forces camp called Play Me, where we were going to spend the night and wait on them to pop the ambush. My mindset was, we got our part done, we can wait till morning. Well, they hadn't been on the ground 5 minutes until they captured a guy coming down the trail, and a North Vietnamese soldier. And he essentially, they had an interpreter with him, and he essentially started laughing at him. He said, "You're right in the middle of headquarters. You know, this is headquarters for a Vietnamese battalion, and basically you're going to die." And so they started hearing bugles and you know, lots of activity around them, and you know, they were taking some fire, and talking to the troop commander, he decided we can't leave them there tonight. If we do, we're going to lose them. So he said, "We've got to get them out." All right. So here we are, it's dark, okay, and we're called on, all right, to go back out. So we cranked up. We got back out there as fast as we could. When we did, it was last light. What I remember about that is, once again, I had a lot of artillery, a lot of strafing going on, tracers everywhere coming up from the ground, you know, from our ships, you know, and those things bounce. You can't really tell exactly what they are. And dark. And we've got to find this infantry platoon that's down there. Okay. So we told them, you know, that it was decided that they would pop what was called a white phosphorus grenade. Okay. That's a grenade that blows white phosphorus. It's basically a fire, you know, kind of thing. Lots of light, lots of smoke, you know, so that we could see where they were. Well, they said no, they just did that. That was going to give their position away. So this infantryman got up there with a flashlight, and he's standing there. You got to visualize. Over there at night, it's like being inside of a bowling ball. Here, there's lights on the ground. Over there, there ain't no lights on the ground. I mean, nothing. And if it's dark, you can't even see what's going on. So he's up there with a flashlight trying to shine it, and we're trying to look down there and find them. So we rolled in, and they found an LZ for us to come into, they said. Okay. Now, the other thing is, an infantryman that's scared picking out an LZ would be very different from what I would pick out.
Right.
So we're rolling in, and we start in on final, and there's only room for one ship at a time, so we have to space ourselves way out. Okay. And the first one gets in, and he takes off, and then the second one's coming in. And gosh, I just remember, you know, this is something else. You know, basically what we had to do is we had to come to a hover at altitude, and then just kind of pick our way along until we could spot him. And of course, the tracers were coming up, and it was really, really hairy. And so we managed to get in. When we spotted the light, we got in. When we did, we turned on our landing lights, because it would have been suicide to go in there without being able to see what, you know, because there are stumps and things. We couldn't even land. We had to hover, and they had to crawl up. They boosted each other up on our, you know, to the skids and then onto the ship. And so Smitty, my co-pilot, was flying, and he had to hold it as a hover while I'm trying to help him keep his tail rotor out of stumps and that sort of thing. You put a tail rotor in a stump, you know, really bad things happen. Yeah. So that was one of the hairiest incidences that I remember. And that was just, you know, just a few days. By that time, I'd been assigned to one of the other new guys. That was Smitty. He'd been there just about 30 days before me. So nobody wanted to fly with him either. So they put us together, you know, and said, well, if they kill themselves, you know, that wouldn't be too.
Essentially, you were a couple of new guys.
We were a couple of new guys, and we had to develop skills to help each other. Well, that was the night extraction, you know, at Play Me. The next morning, well, actually all night long, we put in artillery fires in the valley, in the area, and we had some big stuff. There was a 8-inch and a 175 howitzer battery that had moved in the day before, and they put those things in there all night long. Time we went out there the next morning, we picked up North Vietnamese soldiers wandering around in a daze. They didn't have any fight left in them. I think we captured, you know, 150, 200 soldiers out there. Just would go out there and round them up, carry them in.
They put them on your helicopter.
Put them on the helicopter and bring them in. And so.
How many people did your ship hold?
Well,
I'm trying to get
a Huey, the kind I flew, D model, we could take 10 soldiers. Okay. Now that's American. Now that was probably over gross weight for it, because an American soldier weighed 200 pounds, you know, in all his gear and everything. That made it very difficult to fly, but we could do that. We prefer 8. What we did is that the Huey carried about 1,200 to 1,400 pounds of fuel. So we never filled up. We always carried about 8, which was, you know, a little more than half a tank, so that we could, you know, carry more people. But you get those guys on there. That thing was, you know, it was sometimes very hard to get out of those LZs with the barriers, you know, the trees around them.
Right.
So that was about 40 days into my tour. You know, those kinds of things. We went to, from Play Me then, we started doing some other kinds of activities around things that I remember. We were over at another area on the east side, close to the South China Sea, when we had taken hits in all of our scout ships. So the troop commander wanted us to fly some scout missions. What that meant was you go out and you fly around the area and try to draw fire, and you mark where you get fire on the map. And what they would do in intelligence then is they'd look at where all the fire was coming from, and we might put the platoon down then to go in and check things out. So he said, I want you to fly this scout mission, and he said, I want you to stay out of this area. He marked out on the map this place. It was in the river that I was supposed to stay out of. And we got out there, and we were low level. We were flying, and we were flying fast. And we topped a little hill, came up a hill. Now in a helicopter, when you come over a hill and the ground drops off, you can just dip it and follow that. You know, it's fun. You know, it's just fun. And so there was this long rice paddy in the side of the village that you could just dip down and, I mean, just go, you know, fast down that sucker. It was just more than I could imagine. I couldn't stand the temptation. So we topped that hill and I dipped down. I didn't know that it was the place that he said to stay out of, off limits. When we hit that sucker, we started picking up machine gun fire from the tree line. Okay, and this, I mean, it sounded like it's coming, you know, right out of the cockpit. And when you get hit, you can hear, whoop, 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 you know, kind of like that on the helicopter. You know you're hit, but it's very, very fast. And we started taking hits, and I remember the dust on the bottom came up and, you know, flew up in the air. And I pulled it up and over and down behind some palm trees that were over on the right-hand side. We took a round through the rotor blade that blew a hole in it that big. And when I got back, I got a good chewing out for
going where you weren't supposed to go.
Going where I was not supposed to go. You know, that was not something that, you know, but, you know, I didn't realize I was there.
Yeah.
It was just more. So we took that, you know, hit. We were, you know, as I recall, you know, again, getting a little bit further along in my, you know, tour there, we got to where we had new guys coming in that, you know, basically were replacing some of us, and you know, that we were flying with them. And Smitty had already gone home. As I said, he was about 30 days ahead of me. We set a platoon down one morning next to a village. They were going to go in and check out this village. We hadn't set them down and got out of the area until they started taking heavy fire. They were pinned down. And right away, you know, all kinds of activity starts happening. What we would do is we'd set a platoon down, and we would go pick up another one. And if they got in trouble, then we were ready to immediately insert more troops in to help them. But we had this platoon in. They were under such heavy fire that it was difficult to get in, and there was a lot of concern about what we were going to do. Well, you prefer to set a unit out somewhere else and then come in to them. But they were taking it. They were in danger of being wiped out, and the old man did not want to, you know, to wait until some others could get to them. So we were ordered to go in. You know, I got a medal for this one. That's the reason I'm talking about it. It was a situation where we were out and we were flying around. You could hear what was going on, okay, and you knew that you know, something was about to happen. We tried to get some other helicopters in, and they were shot down. And so we got the order, you know, that we were going to have to go in. So I was number 3, I think, in the formation. The first ship went in, and oftentimes a first ship has an advantage, because if you think about it, if a guy's on the ground and he's got a gun, the first one flies over. It's like, okay. The second one comes, he's more ready. And the third one comes, well, he's like a sitting duck. So we tried to vary our flight paths into those kinds of areas. But anyway, first ship went in and he got in. Second ship was shot up and was unable to get in, and he flew on out and crashed in a rice paddy. So we were number 3. Well, as we started in, we started taking fire immediately. The rounds were coming through. One of them came up through the bottom of the helicopter and hit the pedal that my foot was on, and it was about spent, so it didn't do any real damage other than crack the pedal. I just whoa. And we started in. We were taking heavy fire. Remember, we were getting the infantrymen. We always tried to let them know what they were going into. That's what we call the hot LZ. So I told them, we were rolling into a hot LZ to be ready, to be immediately taken under fire. And they were. And these guys were superb. They were super. And so what I remember about the LZ is we got to it. There were barriers on the side, front side, and then there were barriers on the back side, and we had to kind of come up, and we went down into a hole. As soon as we went down and we hit the ground, if you saw, we were soldiers where the fire was coming, it was a lot like that. That was pretty doggone realistic, because there was fire coming from all over the place. And our guys, when I sat down, I could see them over here, not more than 30 yards, over here, not more than 30 yards. And they were behind berms firing and taking fire. And of course, they were giving us as much cover as they could. And as soon as the troops got out, and they were a little less accustomed to these kinds of landings than our troops were. When we went in on our troops, they would get out on the skids and stand on the skids. And when you got close enough to the ground, they'd jump. Okay, these would kind of tend to wait until you got down and then get out. So they, we got down and they got out. We popped straight up out of there and dove for cover, in a helicopter, and that's what you do. Well, when we got back, of course, we had taken so many hits, the helicopter was unflyable, but it took us back to base camp. Yeah. So, a lot of those kind of things. One time we were flying a milk run back to Aunt Kay. We went back to pick up some mail or something. And what they would have for us is they'd have these days that they'd say would be a stand-down. On a stand-down day, that was the day you were supposed to take care of your equipment and, wash your helicopter, or you clean the instruments or do something. But anyway, you weren't going to go out that day. So, it's kind of a breather for you. And I hated those days. Because you'd start out in the morning thinking, okay, this is, and then it all just turn bad before the end of the day. So we were making this milk run back, and it was supposed to be a stand down day for us. So they just sent Smitty and I back. And on the way back, once again, we started getting calls. One of our scout ships had been shot down, and we were told to get back just as fast as we could. In this situation, they were taking such heavy fire that they were not going to put the platoon in. The pilots were alive, and they were actually on the ground. And you have to kind of experience this to know what it's about. But it just really hairy. The ship went down. Okay, and the pilots got out. They didn't even have a gun. And it's funny because this one pilot that was in this, he came over there, and he thought he was wanted dead or alive. Steve McQueen, he had a sawed-off shotgun that he carried on his side, 20 gauge. The veterans told him throw that thing away. It was just going to make somebody mad at him. Is all it was going to do. And hunting knives and pistols, but when he went down, there wasn't time to get any of that, and he didn't have it strapped to him, so he had nothing. His observer, who was kind of a machine gunner on board, got out with one grenade. And this is a true story. Got out with a grenade. When they got out of the helicopter, it's burning, and they're in a rice paddy. A North Vietnamese soldier comes out with an AK-47 pointed at him. The observer threw the grenade and killed him. One grenade, that's all he had. And of course, we always flew in pairs. So the other ship that was behind him came in. and he dropped off his observer with an M16. So there were 3 of them on the ground with one M16, and these Vietnamese soldiers coming after them. And I mean, they were wanting to get them. This was, they were coming after them. The old man was flying over. The old man, that's the troop commander. He was flying over, and they were pointing to him the direction that they wanted him to go. And so he managed to communicate enough with them on the ground to get them started to moving away from where the others were. And then our gunships were trying to pin down the North Vietnamese, or the Vietnamese that were chasing them. Yeah, it was a big deal. So we're listening to all this as we're going in. We're in an empty ship. Okay, have nobody on board. So the troop commander says, okay, you're empty, so you get to go in and pick them up. You got room. All right, fine. That sounds good. And he managed to get us into a stream bed, which was going down in between these 2 mountains. And the stream bed actually, had pretty high banks on it. So we could go in what we called indefilade, which meant below ground level. And so I was flying, and he's telling me that, he wants me to track this stream bed in and pick these guys up. And he keeps hollering at me, stay low, stay low. And of course, from his perspective, he couldn't tell how low I was. I mean, I was dragging those skids right through the water. And we managed to fly that stream bed down to an area, and when we got to the spot where he wanted us to stop, the pilot was already there. The 2 observers were still out on the bank. We had, I think, 4 infantrymen on board, and we had this soldier on board that was a super kid, just a really good soldier. And I remember we stopped, so we're stopped. The pilot gets on. We've got to wait for the 2 observers to get there. The soldier crawls up, and he's about, maybe eye level with me on the bed. And he gets up there and gets into a firefight on the top of the bank and blasting away, and he's after it. And he's not wanting to leave. But he's covering the 2 observers that are coming down. So they come rolling down the hill all out of breath, and get on board. And then we have to motion for the infantrymen, that have gotten out to get on board. They get on board. And the old man is telling us to come out and stay low. And so we picked up and we flew the contour as low as we could, taking fire the whole time, and managed to get out. So that's what a helicopter's pilot's life was.
How long was your tour?
1 year. 1 year.
Did it just amaze you continually, and when it was over that you survived? I mean, why?
Well, I don't want to build it up to more than it was. And I know you talk to a lot of veterans, and I think one of the things is you think, I experienced some things, but there were people that experienced a lot more than I did.
Well,
But then I think back and I think, there were a lot of instances. There was another time when we had gone back to the landing zone to pick up. We'd had an infantry platoon that had swept an area, and it was supposed to be clean, right? Okay. So we put our troops down, and we went back to stay with them while our troops were going, and then if we need be, we had a ready unit. We could just pick them up and carry them in. But, we didn't know that, so we just went back to stay with them. They'd swept this area, and they were set in them, in a big circle. And we went in, we landed. I remember shutting down. I got out, and I walked around the side of the helicopter, and I was talking to, and they like to come in, there were places to sit, so they'd get on the helicopter and sit down, to rest after a hot time. So several of them crawled on board, and they're sitting there. And I'm talking to this one kid that's there with his M16. When from the hillsides on the side, we were taken under fire with automatic weapons fire. Now, I was not as accustomed to that as these infantrymen were. But when I saw them starting getting on the ground, I decided maybe it was about time for me to too. So, because my first thought was, why are they firing? What did they sing? What were they firing? And so I got down on the ground, and there was a little berm out, about 20 yards, and I crawled up to it. And Tom, the kid I was talking to, took a round right through the head, right in the middle of the forehead. And I didn't know that. But, he never moved. I said something to him, the firing started, we got on the ground. When I looked up, he's still sitting there. And he's obviously, he's dead. We lost another pilot that day, and there were a couple of others, that were killed. When I crawled out to the barn, okay, I didn't have gun, I didn't have helmet, I was naked out there, and it really felt that way. I'm thinking, golly. When I turned around, and again, you talk about the combat camaraderie. When I turned around, the infantrymen were moving toward me. I mean, they were already moving. I mean, these guys were good. They knew what they were up to. And the perimeter started firing. They were putting down suppressing fire. And they were, they moved beyond. They had mortars on the perimeter in just, a matter of a few minutes. And, of course, we had other kinds of gunships over quickly. And what we did is we had a pilot that was hit, and we medevaced him as quickly as we could. He didn't make it, but we got him out of there just as fast as we could. And we knew, that you had. I remember one time one of our ships went down. And I always felt like, those guys that were on the ground really had it a lot tougher than I did, and so. I always wondered how they felt about us carrying them in and then leaving. If they didn't resent that or something like that. But
everybody had a job.
Yeah, everybody had a job to do. And we went in. That ship went down, and it crashed and burned. And as I recall, I think the pilots were killed. But anyway, they were going after them. And where it went down, there was another unit close by. And so they decided to send that unit in rather than taking us in. And one of those platoon sergeants came up to me, and he was very upset. He said, "Sir, those are our guys. We need to get them." And they knew that we would come after them, when they needed that too.
Right.
And we did.
Right.
That deal, and we were soldiers. You saw the movie, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen it 3 times. Because to me it was far and away the best Vietnam movie ever made. I mean, I thought it was just tremendous. But the whole theme of the movie was, leave no one behind.
That's right.
Right.
And let me tell you, I don't know if you picked it up or not, but what happened? Do you remember when the 2 pilots are arguing? One of them was like a major or something, and what had happened was it was a medevac, and they'd refused to go in, and he said, "Don't you ever send my people into a situation like that again." The other guy takes a gun out and points it at him.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What that was a medevac unit. Okay, that had come down, and they were certain. Well, and rightfully so. I mean, the area was too hot to go into. Okay, the 1st of the 9th would have done that. We went in and got those guys, and that's who that guy was that got the gun out. He was in the unit I was in, and he was hot mad that they refused to go in there. And so, and that would happen.
Yeah.
But that's what we knew. We knew, that those guys would come after us.
Yeah. Right.
They would do it.
Yeah. Wow.
And let me just say one other thing too. There was a time there, like I say, I always kind of felt guilty about leaving them down there. But we were, at some place, and I don't even remember where it was, where one of those infantrymen came up to me and he said, "I'm sure glad I don't have to do what you do."
And you're saying, "I'm glad I don't do it."
I'm thinking, wow, it never occurred to me that they thought what we did was more dangerous than what they did.
Yeah.
But, obviously...
Like I say, everybody has a job to do, and there's a different
and,
perception of each job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were, this guy was very pleased.
Right.
He didn't...
So by the end of your year, you knew what they meant by whatever you do, don't get lift, right?
Right.
You understood what they were talking about.
Yes, I understood exactly what they were. I mean, it was a high, really a hazardous deal. And we lost several. We didn't lose everybody. You know, I don't want to give you the idea that, you know, just, you know, but, you know, as I think back on it, there were lots of times it was just, you know, just really, you know, they say there's no atheists in a foxhole. And, you know, to some extent, I think that's true. You know, I'd often wondered what, you know, what if any, you know, kinds of situations, or if I was ever in a situation. I think one of them was where I was protected was when we were taken under fire. I had no idea how that's, because see, I'm standing in front of this guy, and he's dead, and I'm crawling around out there.
Right.
And that bullet went by me, you know, because it all happens at the beginning. You know, it's like it's so sudden. I don't know why, you know, why that was the case. I still don't have a clue as to how it got by me and hit him.
Right.
Another time was that we were assigned to do what we called a radio relay mission. We had one of these ambush platoons out in the Central Highlands, and what they were going to do is go out and observe a trail. And they weren't supposed to pop the ambush; they were just supposed to see what the traffic was on it. So it was about a 4 or 5 man patrol that was out there. And they were too far to radio back to headquarters, so what we'd do is go and fly circles, you know, in the sky, and then pick up their radio and relay back, you know, what reports they were sending in. And so Smitty and I were assigned to do a radio relay. Our time was about 2:30 in the morning that we were going to take off. So we got up, and I noticed that it was real hazy, you know, but in the service and you don't pay much attention. You just, if they tell you to go, you just go ahead and go. Well, what we didn't know was the flight before, which had ended about 12 o'clock, came in and said, don't send anybody else out. The weather's getting too bad. So here, you know, there was supposed to have been somebody from 12 to 2:30, but they weren't there. So nobody was there to tell us that we weren't supposed to go. Well, we got in our helicopter, and we had a crew chief. I think there were 3 of us on that particular night. And we took off. We went into the soup at treetop level. I mean, it just gone. Smitty could kind of see some lights, you know, from the base, and he tried to make a turn. Well, when he did, he said, I got vertigo, which meant his head was spinning. He couldn't tell, and so I took it over. And I just put it into a rapid climb because we had mountains in the area about 3,000 feet. Okay, now here we are, 2:30 in the morning. We're climbing up through the mountains. 2 helicopter pilots, and the clouds, we broke out at about 10,000 feet. Okay, so we're 10,000 feet above the ground. It's all socked in. You know, so what we decided to do, well, we're going to try to fly a radio mission. We're going to guess where we should be, you know. So we flew around up there a good while trying to contact these guys on the ground. Never did make it. Didn't have a clue where we were. So we were a little bit south of Pleiku at the time. Pleiku had the equipment, okay, to guide us in. So we decided, okay, well, we're going to contact Pleiku and get us a ground control approach. Now, the way they do this is that when you contacted, or back then, it's probably, you know, different now, but back then what they do is they put you through a series of what they called identifying turns. So the guy on the ground would watch his blip and tell you to turn 90 degrees, you know, and you'd turn 90 degrees, and then if his blip turned 90 degrees, he could identify you that way. Well, they put us through this series of identifying turns, and they didn't have us on the scope. So I said, okay, now we've got 3 hours of fuel. Okay, we probably already used up an hour, you know, an hour and a half of fuel, and we're stuck up here. And we're thinking, okay, now what do we do now? Well, we used to, as pilots, we'd sit around and we'd talk about, you know, what if this happens, what if that happens, and so Vietnam's not a very big country, and we were about midway from east to west. But we always said, well, if you get stuck above the mountains, you turn east, and you fly east, and then eventually, if you're going to get out over the South China Sea, and that's not a very good deal, but that's better than coming down through the mountains if you have to auto-rotate. So we made the decision, okay, we're going to turn east. Well, we were getting precariously low on fuel. I mean, we were within about 20 minutes of being out. And, you know, I'm thinking, golly, you know, Lord, is this the way it's going to be? We're just going to go out here, run out of fuel, and then, you know, crash into the ground. And Tom, we crossed a little area, and there was a hole in the clouds. Okay? A hole. And right down, I mean, you could see, you know, through the holes, just kind of beginning to get a little bit lighter. There's a special forces camp out there. The day before, they had moved fuel into that area. And we had been there. We knew it. And we were right on top of it. And we just, down through the clouds, landed, got fuel, and then rejoined our outfit. And, you know, that to me, I thought, man, I don't know. Too many coincidences there to be just a coincidence.
I don't believe it was a coincidence.
So, you think about those things.
Oh, sure.
You think about those things.
Sure you do. Yeah. Incredible. My challenge now is to take this back, pick out the stories that I think will best fill up this 27 and a half minutes that you and I have to talk.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything here you can use?
Is there anything I can use? Oh, yeah, I think so. Just incredible stories, and we'll get right to it. And just, you know, I'll lead you into a scenario and then let you describe it. And you might not be able to describe it in as much detail as you described it here today. You know, hit the high points, and then we'll just move on to another one and just sort of try to give a snapshot of the life of a Vietnam helicopter pilot in 27 and a half minutes. It's going to be an outstanding show. Do you have anything, any photographs, any
Slides.
I need to find out. Let me, if I
show you.
Okay.
Let me show you. Because, see, back then it was a 35 millimeter camera.
Right.
Everything that I took was slides.
Right. Well.
But I went through it, and I don't know if these have any merit.
Honestly, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'll take these to KAMU, and
let me go through them with you so you kind of know what you're looking at.
Right.
That is a Vietnamese village, you know, somewhere in the Central Highlands. That's what those things look like. This is just your standard old Huey sitting on a pad with the infantrymen around it.
So this is what you flew?
That's what I flew. That's a Delta model right there. In fact, that probably is the one. That was Christmas 1966.
That's you?
That's me. We dug our own foxholes.
That you?
No, that's not me. That's somebody else.
Yeah.
I think it's probably Captain Higginbotham. I've got, this is the infantryman, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that I'm strapping on the chest protector there, which is what we wore. This is me. In a camp. Okay. This one is going into an LZ. Okay, now, I want you to understand, there are helicopters firing into that LZ with rockets. That's what that smoke is. So as we went in, that's what we were looking at. And that may
These are enemy fire?
No, that's friendly.
That's friendly.
That's suppressing fire going in.
Okay.
Okay. But that could be quite exciting.
Oh, sure.
And this is what the side of the LZ looked like with rockets going in. I wish we had a projector to get a little bit better. This is an airstrike one. And I can't believe these things are 40 years old.
Yeah.
Tom, I mean, that's essentially that ship right there that's on my cannon. This is a briefing taking place. That, I think, is Christmas of '66 too. This is home.
That's home?
That's home. This is our infantry platoon. One of the things that I was surprised when I started looking at the number of slides of kids that I have.
Yeah.
I cannot describe to you how American soldiers relate to youngsters. You know, this idea, you know, even today, let's go over there, and, you know, in Iraq or Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. This was a little girl. One of the soldiers had written back home, and they had sent some clothes, and he was out there dressing those kids.
Is that you?
No, I don't think that's me. I can't tell for sure there.
Okay.
This is just a landscape. There's some more kids. They've got some sea rations boxes. And they're doing a slide down the mountain. There's another one of clothes and so forth. This is a couple of North Vietnamese prisoners here. Those guys look young, but they could kill you.
Goodness gracious.
Look at this little girl. She's cute as she can be. Here's a Huey and takeoff. This is my co-pilot here. He's checking what we call the Jesus nut on the helicopter. Which holds the rotor blade on.
Is that Speedy?
Yeah. Here's a couple of guys coming to get on board. I believe it's just a Special Forces camp at Playmate. It's kind of hard to see there. And here's a couple guys that have just left. I snapped that, I'm pretty sure, as they were moving.
Getting out of your chopper?
They're moving out toward the perimeter. Here's a couple guys on I'm flying over, and there you can see them there behind the levee. There. And this is some guys on patrol. They're coming back from patrol. This is one of our infantrymen. Look at the sweat on him. He's just gotten in.
Wow.
He was one of our... This is a bunker. Notice this is a pilot's bunker. That's not a fighting bunker. You don't see any holes to shoot out of there.
Right.
You just hide in that one. These kids would come around, and some of them were very enterprising. They would shine shoes. This is me. This was me. Oh, this thing here, when I moved into base camp, those guys had gone in and gone down to the local village and bought materials and built the camp. I bought that hooch at Ankei for $100. This was a vast improvement over the tent. Okay, because when we would come back, well, then that's where we could sleep. It had a floor and sides and a roof on it. When I left, I sold it for a profit. That's me just, in a pose. I think these others are pretty, this is another one of me, essentially the same one. This is what a Huey looks like after it's gone in.
Now, what was your rank when you were?
I was a captain. Now, I'm examining some bullet holes there.
On your ship?
And you see how close it is. See, the most vulnerable place on a Huey is the pilot.
Right. Yeah.
So, you can see how close those were.
Oh my goodness gracious, that's right.
And then that's just another tent. Anyway, I don't know if those had any merit at all or not.
Yeah.
You're welcome to.
I need to call and find out. Yeah, I'm sure that they have the ability to put these on the screen. Can I take these and
use
and then,
whichever ones you want?
Yeah, and I'll go through them and we'll use them. What we'll do is during the show, we'll just sort of pause to sort of have a slideshow with you sort of talking about which one they are. We'll kind of go through that quickly. Okay, I've got your phone numbers in case I have any other questions or anything like that. Otherwise, you know where KAMU is on campus?
Yes.
It's if you go George Bush, the last street before
It's right there by the stadium, right?
Yeah,
there.
yeah. It's that one-story building on Houston Street.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And you'll just turn left just past it and park in the back behind the building. There's spaces that say 24-hour parking.
Right.
And you can just park in one of those. And we'll start at 2, so if you can be there 1:45 or something like that, and we'll get you mic'd up and everything.
How do you want me to dress?
However you want to dress. I mean, I usually wear a coat and tie. You don't have to. However, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable with, that'll be good. Boy, there's a lot